Christians, and my friend Andy here, in response to my assertion that the Bible teaches nothing about a 7-year tribulation because it doesn't, my friend Andy here says, so what about Daniel? What is Daniel talking about? Well, first of all, number one, Daniel mentions nothing about a 7-year tribulation. Daniel doesn't even mention tribulation in Daniel 9, not at all. There is nothing there about a 7-year tribulation at all. I challenge you and every other Christian to come up with where Daniel talks about it. Now, what does Daniel talk about, as you ask? Daniel talks about 70 weeks that are determined upon the people of Israel. 70 weeks that are determined upon Israel to begin with. Each week that Daniel talks about is represented as 7 years. So 70 weeks times 7 is 490 years. And what Daniel is teaching is that the fulfillment of his prophecy is going to take place over the course of 490 years from the going forth of the commandment by Cyrus the king to go back and rebuild the temple at Jerusalem. 490 consecutive years until the Messiah, the Prince. The 69th week of Daniel, which means in the last 7 years to go, it begins with the ministry of Jesus Christ at 30 years old. That's how old he is when the 69th week begins. And 3.5 years into the ministry of Jesus Christ, he is cut off, but not for himself, before the people. Christ was cut off in the midst of the last week in order to die for his people and to put an end to sin and iniquity. You cannot overlook the point that the 69th week, meaning at that point there's 7 years to go. Halfway through the middle of this last 7 years, Christ is crucified. That's what Daniel is talking about. The 490-year prophecy of Daniel, the 70 weeks of Daniel, was all about leads up to Christ and his death. It was fulfilled at Calvary. Period. That's what Daniel is teaching. That's what Daniel is talking about. Be provoked and be